welcome to season 3, episode 2. I always do that. I always forget what episode it is of the Blackbox Diaries with Chris and Bailey. And also today we have joining us Hayley Van Loon from Melbourne, Australia. Absolutely awesome. Probably one of my new besties in Australia and in the industry. Learning a lot from her already. And we are going to talk some awesome things around Crime Stoppers International, intelligence, physical security, physical pen testing, and all the things that Hayley does that I also don't know about. So, welcome to the podcast, Hayley.
Thank you, Chris and Bailey.
And Bailey, how are you going today? You look tired.
I'm exhausted. I've been traveling like crazy. And so, you know what? It's just one of those things. Sometimes you travel a lot. Sometimes you're a homebody for months and you're kind of a bridge troll. So that's perfectly fine. It's just one of those weeks, though. But I'm glad to come and decompress and have, good conversations here. So.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like both you and I look like we're full work from home, and Hayley's just joined us like she's going to a formal. So, just top tier. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Hayley. I want to start with, I want to know what is the 101 of Hayley Van Loon? What's your day-to-day look like in the intelligence industry and Crime Stoppers?
So I am a person that focuses on insider threat and critical infrastructure protection. They're my kind of passions. So as a society, it's important that we protect all our vital assets because without water, we've got problems without electricity. We can't have wonderful podcasts like this. All the kind of critical things to life. And also from an insider threat perspective in relation to the current state of play of the world, we're obviously seeing that the world is at its most tumultuous that it's been in our lifetimes, and since the commencement, obviously, of World War One and World War Two. So all of these things are vitally important for all of ourselves and our allies to kind of consider and put back on the kind of front foot of the way we're approaching security domestically and internationally. From Crime Stoppers International, it's helping people understand the links between all the different crime types. So links between human trafficking, counterfeit goods, tobacco, child sex abuse, material proliferation, all sorts of things, and terrorism even, how they're all connected to one another and what role we each have to play in preventing the kind of expansion of serious organised global crime groups.
That's pretty cool. And a lot.
Mind-blowing.
Curiously, actually, I'm going to ask you a question. We probably didn't plan this question beforehand, but Australia is going a little bit crazy at the moment in regards to, like you just mentioned, like, child exploitation, child safety, all that sort of stuff. And Australia is going a little bit crazy at the moment over a number of incidents at like daycare. I'm a dad, I have kids in daycare, and there's obviously like an uptake of people curious around how do we protect our kids in these environments where we're trusting these people to look after them, 8, 9, 7 hours a day or whatever. And, there's so many different things being thrown around at the moment, like, oh, they're going to ban males from working in daycare and childcare and that sort of thing. What can we do, to manage this better?
Yeah, so there are a lot of really awesome technological advancements around the risk space that should be applied to our working with children card framework. So whenever you speak to people in this space who are, I guess, towing a bureaucratic line, they'll say, we have a working with children card process here in Australia and that's effective. The issue with that is it's only catching people who have criminal records for pre-existing offences. So it's not getting people who either have not been caught or have not yet offended. So we use a technology actually out of the US called ClearSpeed, which is a voice analytics technology that allows you to detect risk in a person's response. And so for me, adding this to something like the working with children process, it's a very quick, efficient, and really effective technology that can be used to mitigate risk. It was invented during the Afghanistan war to prevent blue and green attacks between the Afghan National Guards and our allied forces, which we know there were more deaths of allied forces for a period of time from blue and green attacks than they were combat related. And so the technology is not new, and it's tried, tested, it's working, it's being used in a lot of different spaces effectively, including in insurance. So it's being used to process insurance claims. So you have to think about, okay, so if large companies are using it for a really strong ROI, we know that it works or they wouldn't be using it, right? So if we apply something like this, and this is just one example because it's an example I know, if we apply that to the working with children card process right at the beginning, happens over the phone, you get an instant low, medium, or high risk response rating there. We then can use that to determine whether we need to look further at that individual or whether we need to say that individual is not suitable to hold a working with children card, because the process is just far too simplistic to really protect our children, as we've seen in this case that happened in Melbourne in recent weeks. It's happened over a number of years, which has affected thousands of children that now need to be tested for sexually transmitted diseases. I mean, as a mother myself, I want to see this whole process changed, because if we're not doing everything we can to protect our most vulnerable people, then we may as well give up, honestly.
That's absolutely sickening that that is a situation that we're having to face. And the fact that we have to put measures in place to prevent things like that. And it's interesting, as the psychology mind in me, I had a bachelor's in psychology because I wanted to go into intelligence and really think about how the human mind interacts. That's what I guess makes me a better hacker, I suppose, thinking about how people process things differently. And so that when you talk about, this, it listens to the voice and it hears the risk in the voice. I'm thinking about, in the cybersecurity space, we had, industries that were hiring, for example, North Korean, threat actors that were being hired for these roles that were now becoming insider risks, but they answered the questions correctly. And so I'm curious that, that could potentially be something that is also expanded into the interview process. You're talking about for children and getting, you're working with children card, but also, into other industries as well. That is a great technological advancement, but absolutely sickening and devastating that we place trust into these organizations and these communities to protect, like you said, like our most innocent persons in the world. Like I am also a mother, and Chris has kids too. Like we all have families here, and it's absolutely devastating to hear that other people are having to go through these situations.
It's your worst nightmare, I think, those parents are going through right now. Um,
Yeah.
and, and something has to change, and it can't just be all, what's going to work for the show or whatever it is in relation to political lines, etc. This has to be a united front.
Yeah. I think it's similar to, like, they are kind of really an insider threat in a way, I guess. And it is similar to even, the IT industry and everything like that. It's something that's such a reactive process. There's not really any like proactive stuff that happens to do the screening or to make sure that this stuff happens. It's just a checkbox activity. And it's similar to pretty much what Bailey and I do every day. Sometimes, we do a pen test and it's just a checkbox activity, but we still give it, our best. But sometimes people just get on, with their job. They don't really care. They tick the box that's fine. That's the process. But then we go into this kind of reactive approach when something like this happens. And then it's like, oh, well, what do we do? Oh, we just ban men from daycare work. And, we'll just end a whole bunch of people who actually don't have a problems, careers, uplift their lives and change everything because of one individual that ruined it from your process.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
exactly.
So, um, taking a shift from that, what is, your take on all of the stuff that you're doing at Crime Stoppers International around the child exploitation stuff and everything like that? Because I'm interested to hear a little bit about that. It kind of coincides with Bailey's organization with the future proof security stuff as well.
So we've taken quite a lot of time to look at what's happening globally in relation to the response to children, and I have a very strong view around all children everywhere deserve equal protection. So it shouldn't matter what jurisdiction you're in, what government legislations protect you. It's not fair that, say, in a lucky country like Australia, that governments are have the time and ability and money to invest more in child protection aspects online. So we are very strong in the sense we've got the e-safety commissioner in Julian Grant, and we've got now privacy commissioners in Kylie. We've got all these things that some of these nations are just busy trying to keep their people fed. And so therefore those children have obviously a whole lot of other issues, but also they are not being protected in the same manner as children in other nations. So I'd like to see a whole of world approach to equal protection for children everywhere. And so every single project that I look at, I think, well, how can this impact equally everywhere? And obviously that's not a reality. We're not going to see equal anywhere, but that's something to strive for. And I'm all for progress over perfection. So if we can design or implement some kind of program that prevents children in the Philippines from becoming victims that is then consumed by Australian men, well, then we certainly should take that path. And that's kind of I have very much tunnel vision in this area, I guess, in just what can we do? What can we do now? What prevents a victim, even if it's one tomorrow? Like let's get on and do that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful because that really parallels what my organization with Future Proof Security is actually trying to do, which you're focused on, the outward perspective of, protecting children. And my organization is really focused on the at-home perspective and focusing on, parents, educators, guardians of children. It's not anybody that has an influential impact on a child. And child being 18 and under, because I know Australia has recently passed, within the past year, a social media, restrictions for those that are under 16. But in the United States, 17 and 18-year-olds are still technically considered minors. And so it's one of those things where, yes, there are restrictions that could be put into place, but it does not protect those. I mean, really, 16, 17, 18-year-old, like that is a really tumultuous time in, both mentally, emotionally, for children to learn right and wrong, good and bad, what those different things are. And so we're really trying to bring it to the home front of how can we affect it at the first step, which are people that are directly influential on these children's lives. Simple things like how to recognize whether or not something is inappropriate, how to recognize whether or not this is a scam or something like that. And as a parent or an educator, how to have that conversation with children, because especially with my generation, I'm writing the cusp of millennial Gen Z. So I'm kind of like that anxious generation, they call the millennials, but I'm also the Gen Z where we just like grew up with phones in our hands. And so like there's a weird balance between like constantly having access to everything and wanting, I've heard earlier, or I guess younger Gen Z crowds not wanting anything to do with social media because they see their parents or they see, someone that's close to them being so ingrained into it. So there's a really fine line between having complete access to everything and having access to nothing.
Yeah.
So what we were trying to do is bridge the gap between this black and white narrative of where's the gray area, what works best for families and organizations. And so just to come back to the point, I love that it is almost complementary to what you are doing in your role and with Crime Stoppers, because it meets the needs at all levels that, not every organization can have everything. We cannot do everything. Like you said, it's not feasible to assume that. But I love that there are other organizations out there that are mirroring the process while being able to expand their reach to other, demographics.
Yeah. And, I think it comes down to, like you kind of pointed out, we're not all going to have the same viewpoint and we're also not going to have the same strengths and same focus. But how about we all just look at what we have in common? And that is that we want to protect children. So what are we going to do about that to move forward, even if we don't believe that the same endpoint is the same. So some people might say, well,
Mm.
abolition is the only option. Okay, but we both want the same thing, that's protection. We just might not believe that abolition is an actual outcome. And so let's still work together to protect children where we can. And I think that that's incredibly important for us to continue to keep our eye on the mission, instead of getting caught up in the kind of the other parts of the kind of discussion.
Very, very true. Now, while we're on Crime Stoppers, Hayley, a quick question because you are about as accountable as you can be in that organization for cybersecurity. So, what's Crime Stoppers doing from a cybersecurity perspective?
Well, I believe we have just just entered into a partnership with one of Australia's top cybersecurity firms, Stealth,
There we go.
to assist in our uplift. So, all jokes aside, from a Crime Stoppers perspective globally, so we have 800 programs that sit for us in around 30 countries in 5 regions, and we've been around since 1976. And the whole basis of Crime Stoppers International is to allow people to report crime anonymously. Now, we have been taken to court in several nations around the world to try and reveal the source of our information, and we've always won. However, being taken to court and being hacked are two completely different things, right? And so we are partnering with Stealth Cyber to ensure that we stay on the absolute front foot of our, top level cybersecurity to protect our information, our assets, and all the things that are important to us, which includes anonymity and continuing to be able to work in this space and be fit for purpose for 2025. And so it is critically important that we have companies like Stealth Cyber that are willing to step up. We're a not-for-profit, so we have to find places that are willing to assist us either pro bono, or for really, really reduced fees. And we're so lucky that, Chris and Stealth Cyber has stepped up to the plate to say, we're going to help you in this space, which doesn't just help, like it has a flow on effect, right? It doesn't just help us in the anonymity space. It allows us to redirect funds that we may have previously had to put towards cyber towards programs around anti-human trafficking or anti-counterfeit goods, terrorism, all sorts of things. So we do rely on the goodwill of many places, and we're just very lucky that, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, Chris, but we are very lucky that the people like Chris are willing to step up to the plate for us in this regard.
Oh, man, that was some awesome free advertising. Really love it. I might even cut that and just create my own advert from it. That was awesome. But like, it's
Your
not going
own
to be.
testimonial.
Yeah, it's not going to be just me. One of the things that I really, really love and appreciate is my network. I have people like Bailey, and I'm going to bring them along for the journey as well, because I think that the mission that you guys do and the things that you guys do are absolutely incredible. And one of the things that I generally try to hold pretty close to how I deliver work is to make a difference and to work with organizations that make a difference. And Bailey, I know, is the same, like she just likes to help people and so, and to help organizations. So I'm pretty sure she'll be happy to come along for the journey. I haven't actually talked to her about that yet. I just volunteered her then. So welcome to the team.
I feel like I'm being voluntold for something, but I'm on board.
Yeah, welcome to the team.
This whole thing was just a stitch up for that, actually. There's no
yeah.
He was waiting for this moment to drop that information.
This whole episode was just an advertising scheme, a marketing scheme for Stealth Cyber. So, yeah. But jokes aside on that, pretty pumped to be working on it. It's going to be awesome. I know that we're going to take you from where you are to the stars. So, things are going to look really good. For you guys, particularly when we do bring Bailey on for that journey. So yeah, I know that she's pumped, I can see. But what I want to also cover with you, Hayley, is that Crime Stoppers, awesome stuff, intelligence stuff that you do, awesome stuff. But you have a pretty interesting past. How did you get into all of this?
So I just had a really strong interest in national security from very, very little. And so for me, the options were I did Air Force cadets as a teenager. And so my options were to go to ADFA, so the Australian Defence Force Academy, or to go to a normal university. My mother said, something along the lines of only nomads that don't have families join the military. Like, I'm not sure where she got this idea, right? The joke ended up being I married an army officer and became a nomad anyway. So my mom said, "Can you go to a normal university first, please? And if you still want to do it, you can do it after the fact." So I went to a normal university and studied political science and history, which are incredibly important things to understand around the past and the way things sit right now and the interactions between the different countries and histories there that create the problems we have now. And then I went direct entry as a graduate into the Australian government's intelligence community, and spent time there working in counterterrorism. And then in the US, moved there in 2014. And worked for a private intelligence advisory firm there. And, it's really fascinating how far I think the relationship between public and private has come in the intelligence space. With ongoing issues, not even in intelligence, but in law enforcement generally, we're seeing recruitment numbers dwindling and challenges to fill those roles. And so the increasing importance between the private public sector kind of interaction is really, really important. And you see the technology kind of shifts as well, where we're seeing obviously criminals are usually early adopters or inventors and things of technologies that allow them to circumnavigate law enforcement and intelligence functions. And so that ongoing interaction between the private sector to bring the most advanced technologies to bear in this fight is incredibly important. So I kind of digressed, but that's how I ended up here, and I have an absolute passion for it. And my time in the US was I just absolutely loved it. And the people I worked with, I had such an amazing team and I learned so much from my former boss, Luke Bency. He runs the company I work for, Security Management International. And all you have to do is hop online and Google and watch a video of him and you'll feel inspired to improve your security posture because, these guys just are the best in the business. And the difference kind of between Australia and the US is in the US, we use the CAVA methodology to kind of assess risk and vulnerabilities. Here, it's not really a known thing. So every time I say, well, I'm a CAVA certified assessment professional, people go, oh, what? I don't know. But it was invented during the Vietnam War by the CIA to make risk assessments essentially in the field and determine either where to strike or where to protect. And so it has an interesting kind of history as well. So I think I grew my professional private sector legs in the US, and I've certainly brought that back to Australia, which sits in a slightly different space.
Yeah, as someone who has tread the line between private and public sector, I can attest that it is there is eons apart from each other, but they bleed into each other, and they are it's so easy for them to honestly, you need both. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. You can't have one without the other. Having worked for a private consulting company previously with threat intelligence, and then having seen it on the inside in a public sector entity, you have to have both. And I think that is something that we kind of tend to overlook. Like if we're in one or the other, it's like, well, we don't really need the public sector stuff. We're in private sector. We're getting all of the stuff that we need without their help. But then, public sector is like, hey, why would we need commercial threat intelligence, commercial investigators, commercial consultants? Like what value are they going to bring? All of our people are, cleared up to classified levels. And so it's interesting the dynamic between the two. So I can appreciate someone that has had, experience working with both.
That's true. And from that perspective and working with that organization, like no confidential information or anything, what was one of the most interesting things that you were involved in?
Isn't this the question I said?
That's a loaded question. You have to think back to all the NDAs and everything else.
This is exactly what Unix guy asked me, and I was like, dude, I can't answer this question.
No confidential information, like just what's something cool that you did.
Thing is like,
yeah, that's probably fair.
it almost so even if you were to try to vanilla it down and make it, like an unclad, it just takes out
Yeah.
the excitement and enjoyment out of it.
Like you,
But we thought
Well,
we'd test our
like
limits.
yeah,
yeah.
can't answer that.
Thanks for ruining the podcast, Haley. Thanks for joining us. See you later. No, I'm just, yeah, I'm kidding. Okay. No, yeah, no, but I know, yeah, I know that, like, you probably can't say, yeah, that's us. Okay. Let's shift it then. If I was an organization that was looking to manage insider threats, like, let's say, because, we had obviously the Brazilian bank, let's say, like, where the guy sold his credentials for like $900 USD, and they took about 150 million out and filtered it out through cryptocurrency and things like that. I think that's an incredibly hard one to probably prevent and to kind of stop and things like that. But if an organization wants to look at implementing maybe like insider threat risk assessment, or having a, maybe like a process on it on how you would assess somebody, what would be the top five things that we should include in
Yeah.
that?
Okay. Certainly, I see huge value in face-to-face interviewing. I know that all the rage is, let's get on a Teams, let's interview people on Zoom. But let me take you back a bit to where the intelligence side of this starts, right? So being a spy is the second oldest profession in the world, second to prostitution. All right. So it is, yeah. So it is a really old profession that has served many people through the ages. We look at like Queen Elizabeth I. She had one of the first like spy masters, I guess, which allowed her to protect her position. We look at the Civil War, not the Civil War, sorry, the US War of Independence. They were able to overcome the British, even though the British had like far superior military might, etc., because of good intelligence and good spies. All right. So when we look at and applying the intelligence ideas to insider threat programs in the public and private sectors, we have to look at, well, what are we doing at the early phases of any kind of access to? I mean, it's all fine to get everyone to sign NDAs, but if you've already let the people in the door that are going to sell the information, NDAs are useless and irrelevant, right? So we need to get people in front of people, because that's where you're getting the human factor. You're seeing the kind of micro expressions, you're seeing people's responses, you're able to actually feel a person's energy. You can't feel a person's energy through a computer screen, unless you've got a lot of energy, and then maybe you might feel a little bit of it. But the negative energies, or the discomfort that sits with people, or the pregnant pauses and things that occur when you're asking people difficult questions. And I think a step away from, we've moved along this line of not wanting to offend people. And so we don't ask a lot of pertinent questions that are kind of important to know. So applying kind of risk methodologies around, well, what are the risk factors that make somebody potentially an insider? It's not necessarily that they start off as a nefarious person. They may be a very good person, but life changes, like divorce, mental health issues, deaths in families, all sorts of financial changes. People become addicted to gambling, to alcohol, to substances. And so are these things being accounted for in that process? What makes you vulnerable to an approach by a competitor that's looking to steal IP, or by a foreign intelligence service or government that wants access to what you have access to? And I think one of the biggest issues in Australia specifically is people all think no one would be interested in me. I had this weird person approach me in a bar, but I've got nothing to give them, because people don't understand the access that they truly have. So you may personally have no access, but it turns out your brother has a top secret clearance, or it turns out that one of the clients of the company you work for is a government agency. And by slowly filtering out information that you may not realize is relevant, can help either a competitor or a foreign government to gain access to sensitive or classified information via other methodologies. So I think very early on, identifying that if somebody has a gambling issue, that makes them susceptible to monetary bribery, but it also makes them more susceptible to, hey, I've got this project that's outside of your work that I need help on, and I'll pay you this much for it. And meanwhile, they don't realize they're actually feeding a whole lot of confidential information into their report, and the people that have actually asked for it are actually cover for a foreign intelligence agency. And so I think it's educating people within human resources departments, within the executive, within key decision-making points, as well as insider threat programs that provide training, especially in our critical infrastructure sector, to staff to say, here are the warning signs. Here's also what it might look like if someone is trying to recruit you. Here's what extraction of information look like. Here's flags that you should put up early with your HR areas, and also designated security officers that actually have this experience. So it's one thing, like I have such incredible kind of respect for law enforcement officers, and we do see a lot of former law enforcement officers in these positions. But if they've come from specialist areas like homicide or sex offenders, or, you know, they've been a street cop for 20 years and then they walk into a security role, they're not expected to know what an insider threat might look like, because it's kind of different. And so education for those people in those roles is incredibly important. They don't have to be an expert on it, but they certainly need greater exposure. So I think better education across our sector, better risk management kind of tools in the beginning, face-to-face interviewing, none of this remote recruitment stuff. I'm sorry, you need to invest early in making sure that you're getting the right people. And as much as I love cyber, guys, I think human factors remain at the core of protecting our institutions. Sorry, but, you know, cyber.
It's the same. We're of the same view. We're of the same view. Yeah. If you're not, then
it's not always a popular statement. But, you know, if we're not considering the human factors and in that process, then there's a serious problem there. So there's a lot of focus on putting money into, you know, strengthening the cybersecurity, and then they're not thinking about the people, which are the weakest or the strongest part of that chain.
Yeah, no, we Bailey and I talked about it last week, or the last episode, about how people are saying that, you know, like cybersecurity is no longer a tech problem, it's a human one. No, it's always been a human problem. Yeah, it's always been a human problem, because, like, no offense to everybody out there, but humans are stupid. You could spend millions on technology and products and training and everything like that, but it takes one idiot to click on a link. And apologies if you clicked on a link, but you're an idiot. So yeah, like, I'll just,
you know, like, it's not just that, it's that things are getting more sophisticated and people are busy. And so it's, you know, like, I don't mean to say you're wrong, but people are busy and people just click through things now because they want to get to the next task. And we're used to the tick and flick, next task. We're being pushed to our limits. And so that actually opens us up to more vulnerability, where even some of the most savvy people become victims of scams and acts, you know, providing ransomware, all sorts of stuff, because of the time pressures we're all under. Like, we're expected to have children like we don't work like we don't have children, you know, keep everything going, be constantly connected, do your kids' readers, bath them appropriately, make sure that you've got the costume sorted for next week's book week thing, but also make sure that you don't click on the wrong link when you get this sudden, you need to respond to this immediately thing, you know. I think that
100%, but I'm just going to point out there that I'm helping you with cybersecurity now. Please don't click on the link, even if you're busy, Hayley.
I'll send the link to you.
I mean, yeah, just don't click it, please. That's not how I want to start off.
I might do it just to
it's funny that you. It's funny that you know, you're talking about, like, oh, time, you know, it's all about time, and we are, you know, we're required and expected to do all of these things, but we only have, you know, 24 hours in the day. I heard someone tell me that today, actually, just to contextualize it, I just use, and quote, I just click the terms of service and agree. I don't read them, because there's nothing that I can do to argue about them if I want to use the service. And I was like, okay, you know, reasonable point. But it's not just terms of service. It's not just, you know, it's there are a lot of things out there. You just click, and you're like, well, I need the convenience of using this thing or doing this thing, or, you know, I've got to mentally process all of this other stuff. So this is convenient for me. And so I'm just not going to use any brain power to think twice about this. I'm just going to do the thing. It's going to be the most convenient for me. And that's where, like, that human error comes in. And that's why I love, like, the psychology stuff about, you know, the Intel community, because it's like, we are all very, very flawed.
So, when we think about counterfeit goods and very cheap goods and things like that, I don't think there's a lot of thought process that goes into how these things are made and how they link into human trafficking. So, there's pretty solid evidence that all of these really cheap things that are available to people that we're all excited about getting the deal on um, probably aren't made in the best conditions. We run a program at Crime Stoppers International called Stop the Illegal Empire. And I can actually give you a link to that on this video that kind of runs you through what it is. But essentially, it starts off with a counterfeit handbag. And if we look at, we go through the chain of acquisition of that counterfeit handbag or really low cost, really fancy looking handbag, and we look at where it was made. So it was made by a little girl that was chained to a sewing machine for 16 hours a day when she should be at school, and then the proceeds from that go to a gun runner, which then go to a individual who's running counterfeit tobacco, which who knows what's in it. So there's several implications there around public health issues, as well as where that line of chain of acquisition has come through. And then it goes to a next person who, when the counterfeit tobacco is shipped, in one direction, they're not going to send an empty shipping container back. So they fill it with sex slaves as young as 9 years of age back to the original destination, who are then sold, and then they serve up to 50 grown men a day. These are 9-year-old girls, some of them. And so when we look at, well, I bought this handbag and it only cost me this much money, the cost is actually very high, from a human perspective. And so I just think as consumers, and I don't expect everyday people to understand this, but that's what our campaign was about that we ran last year. It's about allowing people to understand what their purchasing choices kind of lead to. And whilst, everyone's really excited because, cost of living is a challenge and people don't, if they can see the same thing on one of those websites at, a tenth of the cost that they can buy it in the shop here, or even the kind of different options. So the options are greater because as more retail closes due to economic challenges, there's not as much options out there for tops and, shoes and handbags and all that kind of stuff. So these places offer more options to us. And so I totally understand why people are utilizing these kind of places to buy things, but we're really not educated on the actual human costs of these items. It's cheap for you, but not for somebody else.
It's a massive wake up call, to be honest, because I I don't even have enough fingers to count how many people I know that use all of those websites, because there's a lot of stuff there, obviously, that's beneficial, family members and everything. Oh, where'd I get that? Oh, like off this website, that website. Like, oh, okay, cool. You got a hard drive off there. I mean, yeah, it's incredible. Like, I guess like low cost stuff. Yeah, like because we just see the dollar figure, right? So, yeah, I don't. Yeah, you don't really see it. You don't really think about it. But again, like until you told me, I would never have
No.
known.
And
Probably.
it's like my mission to tell people all the time, and it's not to make people feel bad. I mean, I've bought cheap things before too. I'm not saying I'm completely innocent of it, but now I know. It's like when you were younger and you buy a purebred animal and then you realize that back in the day, a lot of them were bred in puppy farms and things. And now we know that that's a thing and we wouldn't do it anymore. We all grow and we learn. And I'm not implying that any of us are perfect or should be perfect. But once we're armed with better information, then we can make better choices, I think, and choose who we want to be and what we want to send our money towards.
Yeah, it's like when I was in school and they showed me a video about chickens making caged chicken eggs, and it terrified me and traumatized me. Now I refuse to buy caged eggs as an adult.
Yeah.
And like even
They
if I
all
go to the shop and there's caged eggs there, it's like that's my only resort, and my daughters love eggs for breakfast, so I'm gonna have to do this. And then I'm like, I'm so sorry, chickens.
But
And then like I
that's
apologize
your
to the universe.
chickens. Are the chickens your gods? Like the chicken god?
I don't know, but like I'm just kind of trying to put that mad chicken energy out into the universe. Like I'm sorry, I don't speak it quack quack. I don't know,
That
like
sucks.
That's
Is that
ducks.
the sound a chicken makes
It is
now?
ducks.
And is that
That's a
an
chicken.
Australian chicken? Because I'm not familiar with that. That's not the sound
Yeah.
that American chickens make.
No, yeah, no chickens go quite. You can keep that in because that was just dumb. Yeah. So, see why
Well,
people don't talk to me? Oh, I have no friends.
in US high school, for the most part, I don't know if they do it now, but when I was in high school, like a fortnight ago, I was trying to relate my age back. We used to watch this video in, I guess it's a movie, a documentary, mockumentary, something like that, in health class. It was called Super Size Me, and it was all about like the
Oh
the
yeah.
behind the scenes stuff, and it gives you like the ick, and it's trying to basically explain, hey, this is what you're doing, but do you know what's actually happening behind the scenes and within your body? And so you're talking about, the whole process of maybe buying, either counterfeit or cheap things. And I'm like wiggling in my seat, like I cannot sit still, because it just gives me such an uncomfortable feeling to think that, this is Blackbox Diaries. This is not just cybersecurity. This is technology. This is risk. This is security in general. And security does relate to the security of people and of, lifestyles and communities. And so this is very relevant to the conversation in general. And I'm just uncomfortable having this conversation, but it's a good discomfort because I think more people need to be aware of what their actions actually do. I mean, it's like that in the cybersecurity space. It's like that in, the safety and risk space, it sounds like as well.
Yeah. That's 100% true, actually. It was like do you remember the sugar documentary that went crazy on Netflix? And then like they showed you all the impact of sugar on your body and everything like that. And I watched that eating like a bag of Maltesers. Like I finished the Maltesers, but I didn't feel good about it. Right. It's like the same. It's like if I was to, like look around and then I find something cheap, like I'm gonna assess the return, like the risk here. So I'm gonna go like now when I'm doing that, I'm gonna be like, what's this really costing? And is it really worth it when I could literally just pay $20 more and go down to the
Yeah.
shops?
And, some
And
people are going to have to make difficult choices, and I think that goes back to our discussion, Bailey, around, abolition and, all these kinds of things around particular issues. There are people struggling out there, and there is a challenge between the weight of, well, what's the implication of buying this thing versus making sure my child has what they need. And we certainly are not trying to demonize anybody for making those choices. It's just, if we can make different choices that impact other human beings, then we should. And be realistic about that, because then people say, well, what about other stores that are more well known that sell things at a cheaper rate, you know as well. Well, you could be buying something that's priced at $300, but the store only bought it for $2, and we don't know what their supply chain looks like. And so there are a lot of factors, but it comes down to us just making the choices that we're informed about, and making them kind of better than we have previously, with more information.
I think education is just a really important thing. Like I think that we have platforms that are used to share such, like so many things go viral on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, everything like that, that just fuel so much hatred and bigotry and everything like that and make the world just absolutely miserable. Like I don't even really read the news anymore because it's just depressing every single day, right? But I think we should definitely be using the platforms more efficiently to spread education about things like this so that people can make a more informed choice. Like as you say, like I think it's a struggle for a lot of people because I know that some people would, use, discount sites and things like that to buy things so that their kids can go to school or whatever. Like, obviously, you have to weigh it up, and maybe that's the only option that you have. Then, it is what it is. But I think if you have an educated approach to it, to be like, look, that sucks, but maybe next month I'll donate to charity or something. I don't know. Like, try and balance out your
But like
karma.
all the influencers you see, well, not all, but there's a load of influencers you see that are pushing these products, right? Or like
Yeah,
experts, they're on there telling these things, and I think, from what basis are you an expert on this, and on what basis are you
yeah,
forming all these thousands of followers you have, when you don't actually, like, I listen, I think, oh my gosh, or the try on, the try on, and what is it? The latest trend is, or it's not latest, I'm a bit dated, but where people tell you stuff while they're putting their makeup on, and it
Oh,
drives me
don't
nuts.
even get us started. We we had this whole conversation in the last episode, and I went on a whole tangent that I'm not going to repeat. But the bottom line is that we're over
Yeah.
influencers.
Hold
Influencer
on. Just
canceled.
if I put on lipstick while I'm telling you about this, will it have bigger impact? Well,
Yeah, most
You know what?
likely.
It might. Truthfully, it might. That's the way
Yeah.
that the algorithm goes.
What about if I put on lipstick? Do you reckon it'll
from
help?
L'Oreal, if they could sponsor me, that would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, Chris
but
putting on lipstick while telling you about security is probably more of an eye-catching thing.
next episode, hold that thought. I reckon I can do it. But yeah, but I mean, you talk a little bit bad about influencers when you yourself are one, technically, Bailey.
Duh. Nope, nope. Having a following does not mean I am influencing it. Actually, if you want me to be honest, I'm a bad influence.
That's fair. Maybe you can just start that, the bad influences,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then like come out with that on LinkedIn, and then by becoming the bad influencers, you inherently become an influencer. So it's kind of like this weird inception
Look,
thing.
not all influencers
This
are bad.
psychological,
Not all influencers are bad.
But like
this one.
I know what you're talking about influencers like pushing products, because I went through this phase where I was on Instagram all the time and I was like, that looks cool, buy. That looks cool, buy. And then I bought some. I've got my cupboard is full of just random things. Some of them cool, some of them not cool. And then yeah, like that's what I mean. Like I reckon my details are everywhere on the dark web because I put it into some free random sites in different languages.
Weren't you the one that told me not to click on the link before?
Yeah, yeah. There's a thing that my dad used to say when I was growing up: "Do as I say, not as I do."
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
well,
I live by
me
that.
too. Me too, actually.
Age old adage.
So yeah, no. Anyways, I think that was pretty much all I had for you today, Hayley.
Great. Well, thanks for having
Do you have anything else, Bailey?
I just want to hear some final words about where you think you're going next with whatever projects that you think is your passion point. We've talked a lot about, the intel side, the cyber side, or I guess my cyber side, but the safety side with children and preventing exploitation and stuff. So I guess just to round it out, where do you think you're going next with whatever is your biggest passion
me.
project?
Well, I think I'll say stay tuned. I've got a few things in the pipeline right now. One of the things that the current CEO of Crime Stoppers International says to me all the time is that I'm too mission focused. And, I don't think that's a bad thing. We need some people with some mission focus pushing these things forward. But I certainly will be reaching out to the OSINT community in the coming months for one of the things I've got in the pipeline, to hopefully uplift some of our capabilities in a number of areas, including missing persons, early intervention processes, which obviously does include children as well. A number of initiatives around child safety from a global perspective, and some new partnerships that hopefully will step squarely into the cyber security space. So stay tuned for updates on that.
Oh, that's so exciting. You need
It is
someone
going to
for
be awesome.
OSINT. I love that.
Well, you'll get, I'm sure,
I'm all about OSINT.
Bailey.
You're definitely, I reckon, going to be on the list. I think introducing you two is the best, aside from for my mentality of trying to get your names right, because they're pretty much the same. It's very annoying. It's like as you get older and you stay and you have more kids, you could call them by the different names and you get mixed up
I've
all the
called my
time. So,
children by
um,
cats' names before, so
by the cat's names. Fair
yeah.
enough, fair enough. And I think the only other thing I took out of this, Hayley, was that every time we hang out, I'm going to feel like you're like interviewing me and watching my body language. So it's very terrifying.
No, it requires to be like you to be switched on and paying attention, and you've learnt so far. Most of the time, I'm not. So
Wow, like they would be like, yeah, like I've got to really be kind of like focusing on the target. They've got to be an interesting person. I can see why you have no friends. Like honestly, get out of
I'm
here.
not worried about you. I'm not using that energy up.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Like, yeah, but no, I am incredibly boring, but I am. I thought I was interesting, so thanks for pointing that out. Legend, honestly. But
Not what I said. But thank you very much for having me. It's been great chatting to the two of you.
Yeah,
thanks
it's
for
been
joining
great to
us.
meet you.
Um, all right, well, that brings us to the end of season 3, episode 2. I got it right this time of the Blackbox Diaries with Chris and Hayley and Bailey and Hayley and Bailey, Bailey, Hayley. It was a really cool episode. And we're going to put some links, to do with Hayley, in the descriptions and everything like that. So you can donate to Crime Stoppers. You can get some information on all the stuff that they're working on. Probably a link to their awesome cybersecurity partnership that was announced. Big props to that. Yeah, a few other things that you can go and get the information for that Hayley talked about, because it's very important to educate yourself, make sure that you're making the right choices where you can and where it's possible. And I think the ultimate message out of this was that humans are important, human lives are important. Be a nice person, don't be a dick. And we'll catch you in the next episode.